All right, everyone, welcome back to the Investigative Truth Cold Case Missing, Episode 8. Episode 8. So you're probably going to hear kids running around behind me, geese. Kind of loud here, but I figured I'd try something a little bit different. So in Episode 7, I think at the end, once again, I'm going to do this to you. At the end, I says, I'm going to jump back into the Taj case, and I'm going to do that a little bit. But I want to answer some questions first because I love questions. I feel that people are interested in knowing the behind the scenes stuff and the life that you live when you work a cold case, and the frustrations and the good things and the bad things and dealing with a family and all of that stuff, and how investigators feel. And I'm not talking about every investigator, but I can certainly talk about myself, and that's the one investigator that I know the best. So I like sharing. So I got some really good questions since my last video, and one of the really good ones was, how do I, as a regular civilian, non-law enforcement, get involved in unsolved homicides, unsolved missing people? I thought that was a great question, and I received several questions. So I'm going to start with that one first. And the answer to that is that, well, there's a couple answers, because it's really a two-prong answer, right? Answers to that one question. On both accounts, whether it is an unsolved homicide or missing person, I think you have to tread lightly. And what I mean by that, in different ways, if you're a person that likes looking into cold cases or unsolved cases, and it's an unsolved homicide, you have to realize that at some point, I think if you're doing very well in it, you're gathering information, you have to consider a couple things, especially if you are reaching out to people, or you're getting a little bit closer to maybe solving it, or you're hitting the right people, meaning you're finding the right people to talk to that might know something or that might have committed a crime, is that you don't want to put yourself in danger. Now, I know people are going to be like, I'm not doing it, because I'm worried about danger and all of this stuff. And yes, I'm a true believer that fear is self-created. Things that we fear are self-created. We don't have to fear anything, really. Although if you do look at some, pages on Facebook, and they're talking about different things, and, people are terrified apparently to just live. But you have to be aware that if you're drawing in the negative stuff, the negative people, and you run across somebody that has a lot to lose, then you may be the one person that they think doesn't need to be around. So I don't know when that has happened in a case. I just think that it's important to state that when you get involved in this, you can run across people that are very odd, and then you make contact with them, and then all of a sudden now they're contacting you and they're making weird statements. And so that's just a buyer beware kind of when you get involved in cases. But it's easy enough to get involved in cases because you can just jump right on the internet and start doing your research. And that's what a lot of people do, and they do it well. I've said that before, and I appreciate those people. I think when you start getting into a case and you get in deep and you start finding out viable information, which I've mentioned is very important with unsolved cases, cold cases, because that's what you're looking for, is viable information. Because in these cases, they've run out of that. They have no place else to go. So any new information is good information. You also have to tread the waters lightly with that in what you do to go further. So here's a good example. If you become aware that a person that is missing enjoyed hiking at Leominster State Forest, and you get enough information to know that they would frequent one of the trails and they would often stay overnight, and you have an idea of where this is. I'm not saying that you can't go up there and look yourself, especially if a case is an old case. But certainly if you go there and you find something that is viable information, maybe you see clothing, maybe you find remains, maybe you find something, right? That's where law enforcement gets involved. After that, you have nothing to do with it. It's the same with me now. It's the same with me with the Taj case or any case that I look into. Once I get to a certain point, it's the end of the game for me. They're allowing me, any agency that allows me to remain in something that has potentially been solved or found or whatever it is, that's so critical that now police have to take over. If they kept me involved in that, that's really just out of respect. They don't have to do that. So it's one of those things, as a private citizen, as a web sleuth person that likes looking at these cases, I think it's great that people will dig and go down the rabbit hole on cases. I think you have to understand that once you get to a certain point with information or with evidence, you need to stop. You need to reach out to someone, share that with them, share it with them the right way, understand how to share that so they're going to listen to you, and go ahead and share it. If it's viable information, then that's great. If it's not, then you continue on with your research. Because there's the possibility that if you don't do it the right way, you could jeopardize a potential criminal case. And I don't think anyone ever wants to do that. So, and we have fishermen here too. So you never want to jeopardize a criminal case in anything. So just be smart about how you do it. So it's different, I think, for unsolved homicides, is because it's an unsolved homicide, and you're digging, and you might be talking to the person who did it and put yourself in harm or potentially ruin a case. Like you're going to record someone giving a statement when you can't do that in Massachusetts anyway, or whatever. So I think you know what I'm saying, reference to that. But I love the fact that people like getting involved. I often hear, give me a case to do. There's so many out there, and I myself have had the honor of being involved in some cases, having knowledge of cases when I was in law enforcement. So I have the information that's not known to the public, and that allows me to do a better job with them right now. So if there was a case that I'm unfamiliar with and I wanted to start from scratch, I could probably reach out to a police department and see if they would be willing to let me take a look at a file. I don't think every police department would do that. I think some would, just based on reputation and in my career and whatnot. But if they said no, thank you, it's an open case and there's things in there that we don't want anyone to see or we're not going to share, then I would respect that. But with that being said, I appreciate people that like getting involved in cases and will actually do the work that it takes to go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, and start digging up information. I'm doing that right now. Right now, I found myself going, and I at the moment, I kind of forget how I started going down the rabbit hole, but I'm down this rabbit hole now going, how did I get here? And how am I linking all these people together, which could lead to something positive? That's all I can say about that. Okay, so that was question number 1, which I appreciate. Another question I got was reference to when I started this investigation. I think I talked about this a little bit, but someone asked me, why did we name it a reinvestigation? And in naming it a reinvestigation, do I feel, or were we snubbing people? The answer to that is, if we were, let me put it this way. The intention was not to snub people that did this case before. I talked to the lead detective of it twice. There weren't very long conversations, but we spoke about it twice. I had all his reports. I had a couple questions for him, and I asked. But No. Did we allow people to come back into the case and give their insight and their opinions in their unbiased opinion, whatever it was? No. And the reason we did not do that was because we wanted to do it with fresh sets of eyes, an unbiased mind, because I don't care what anyone tells you, the worst investigation is someone who comes into something with a bias. I think we've seen that. We've seen that in cases recently. We've seen that in cases in the past. And we did not want that. We agreed that we did not want that. We wanted to start fresh and go from there, especially, like I said, especially after reading the reports that we were reading. It's not a criticism. The only thing that I've said about investigation-wise is that, honestly, things were done differently. Things were done differently 44 years ago. And no one can say, no, they weren't. An investigation was an investigation. Well, if an investigation was an investigation, why did it take until 5 o'clock in the afternoon to take the report of a boy who was missing at 7:30 in the morning, right? That's something that's changed, right? Did we have searches? Was the apartment looked through? Was neighbors spoken to? Was any of this stuff done that would be done today? That's where I'm going. So things are a lot different now than they were then. When we began doing that reinvestigation of it, and where did that word reinvestigation come from? Honestly, I don't even know. We reopened the case. The case was cold. No one was working on the case. There was no information that had come in. I've said this before, the box was next to a detective's desk. It was collecting dust. It was not in any type of order at all. It took us a long time to put everything in order by date, reports, etc. So there was no activity, no investigation that was ongoing in Taj Narbonne's case. Yes, at the very beginning, there was constant reports, constant investigation. People were spoken to, and it went all over the place. So that case kind of went down different paths, so to speak. Went down a lot of it, branched out all over the place. Different parts of the country and sightings and all of this stuff. Nothing that panned out. Searches were done. No, that's the one thing about searching. And was that Leominster Civil Defense, and I talked to several people involved in the search, they were looking for a missing child that had run away. There was not a mention of the potential that Taj was dead at the time. Can't say that now with surety, right? Cannot say that Taj Narbonne is dead. Can't say that he is alive. All we can do is keep going and looking for answers. I can say this, that, we're playing on both sides of the coin here with information. That's the good thing about it is, we can look at this avenue, at this scenario, and look at this scenario and run investigations side by side on the same case. When I say me, it's pretty much me at the moment, but that's okay. So, when we talk about reinvestigation, I don't ever remember really utilizing that word. I have here on YouTube, it has in the media and whatnot, but I don't know where that began, because basically what we did was reopened it and we started from scratch. We started right from the foundation, literally the foundation of 15 Naples Street, and we went from there. So, if you look at it as a reinvestigation or the reopening of a case, and we just really went back and did it differently as we looked into it, then that's really what it was. So, but I will use the term reinvestigation. I'm not sure where that came from. It might have been me, it might not have been me. But, not involving people who had previously been involved in the case was a decision that we made to have the unbiased look into this case. And that's what we needed. I have no regret doing it that way. I will never have any regret doing it that way. I think we had all the information that we needed that was on paper. that's the other thing, mention it or not, is that not everything was on paper. We know that certain activities took place, part of the investigation, that we did not see written down, or if someone took part in the investigation or followed up on something that's not there. So there's a lot of that as well. Typical for a cold case where maybe some information comes forward. A couple weeks ago I had information about a location that apparently the stepfather was living in or living near or something like that, and that was news to me 44 years later. Had any police activity ever occurred at that address or at this address? I can't say. To my knowledge, no. But it's news to me, and interestingly enough, brought up by a retired law enforcement from another agency, apparently. So, but I never heard of it. I never saw a report on it. And that's where we are with that. So, but it wasn't meant to, the way we did it wasn't meant to offend people. I know it did, because we got that pushback. I talked about that, I think, in the first time around. Talking about Taj. I was talking about the pushback that we got. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why aren't we involving people? Why aren't we involving the original investigator and other people? And we kind of stopped that dead in its tracks, because that's not how we were going to do it. And with permission of the police chief at the time, we did it the way we intended. If people were hurt over that or felt snubbed, then that is what it is. It really wasn't the intention. And I think anyone that works a cold case, I know that there's some people take ownership of cases, and that case is their baby. It's happened in numerous cases that I know of, even locally, where people don't want to part or share information or let anyone look into it. Quite honestly, I think that is the absolute worst thing to do when it comes to a case that is unsolved, because the more eyes on it, the more new minds focus is a good thing when you're looking at solving something so old. So I've always welcomed that with Taj's case. There's a few people who have really kept me focused on where we are going with it, where I have gone with it, ideas, not allowing me to venture too far off. Something that's so easy to do in a cold case is to just start thinking, or if you have people around you that are really super focused, it's like groupthink. If you're working with 3 or 4 or 5 people, and the strongest personality has their opinion, whether it be personal or professional, then maybe you don't want to say anything, and you're going to kind of go along with what others are thinking. And that is, again, something that is so dangerous in these cases. So, but I don't care who solves Taj's case. I don't care who solves any case. I don't care if it's someone walking in the woods and finds a bone and they solve a case. Kudos to them. I'd be the first person to draft them up a certificate of intelligence for walking through the woods, finding a bone, and not saying, hey, I showed it to my friend who's a hunter and they said it's a deer leg, and it ended up being a human leg. So that's not a knock on deer hunters, but unless you show me your forensic anthropologist graduation letter, your doctorate degree, it means nothing to me. So anyway, it was never intended to be like that. So that was question number 2, but a great question. One other question I had was, why wasn't there an article this year in the newspaper? And I was actually happy to hear that, because someone was paying attention that there wasn't a newspaper article on his anniversary. So I'll be honest with you. I am not a fan of newspapers. I'm not a fan of people who write and cut and paste from old articles when you are having an interview with them, a fresh interview where you might be talking about something or giving different statements about something, and then you read an article and it's like this was just simply copied and pasted from an article 3 years ago. I'm not a fool, but I did share it on Facebook and share it on social media, and I think the couple of things I put in reference to Taj had like 75,000 interactions and 300 shares and 1,500 this, 30,000 this. So that does its job. Social media does its job, and people reach out to me on Messenger, ask questions, or share a story about Taj. So that does its job, and I think social media actually can do its job better than a newspaper article can in that sense. But having said that, I also do want to say that for many, many years, Diane Bedoin, who was a writer for the Leominster Champion, did an article every single year. And she was phenomenal. She, had a connection with the case, and she was, I think sometimes, I'd see her in maybe December, and she'd be like, hey, in March, I'll contact you and do an article. Thank you. Didn't even have to think about it. She always put it out there and always wrote it well, and always reached out to certain people and brought in different components to that writing. So I always appreciated her and certainly miss her in the media world. But social media is an animal if used correctly. So as far as the Taj's case goes, very active. We learned so much. I just recently spoke to Annette, Taj's mom. We had a good conversation. She has known for 22 plus years that I am here. I'm here to stay. I'll figure it out, whatever direction the case went in. I'm still looking. I share with her, what do I share with her? That's someone else. What do I share with her? I don't share everything with her. She knows that. She knows that I'm looking into it. There have been times when we've done different searches or followed up on different leads. I might mention that to her, but then I'll also mention that the lead went nowhere. Whether it be a picture years ago or a search we did in a certain area, that's what I share. And yes, we have had difficult conversations. I have asked her the difficult questions that need to be asked when it comes to a missing person. So whatever questions or comments or that relative to Taj's mom, I can say this, that since the day I spoke with her after meeting her parents and getting ripped apart by her mom, and I laugh about that interaction, but since the day I began speaking with Taj's mother, Annette, she has always answered my call or called me back. She's always answered my questions. She came into the police station on several occasions to talk to me. And in my opinion, she's been cooperative. So that goes back to witnesses and, what people relay to you and how they relay it, is that if there is something there that is not being shared with me, and this goes with anyone involved in the Taj case, if there's something someone's not sharing with me, I can't force it out of them. Can't do it. I can only keep working on what I'm working on with the hopes of someday it resolving itself. I think that's important to understand, or for people to understand that, again, like I've said, we can't force people. We can't force people. We can't force answers during interviews or an interrogation. We can't search places without probable cause. Can't search people without probable cause. So, there's a lot of rights that we as investigators have to follow. And that includes me as a private investigator. I can be rude, I can be whatever I want to be, but that never gets what you want in cases. So I think that about covers everything that I wanted to talk about in this episode. So I appreciate your support. I appreciate the likes, the comments, certainly the questions behind the scenes. I truly enjoy them. I'm hoping to jump onto another case very soon that we can talk about. If there's any case that you want me to look into, I certainly will. I'm thinking I might jump over to the Deborah Ann Quimby case in Townsend from 1973, but really on that, looking into that case is a lot of discussion with a teacher that was murdered, I believe in 73 in Townsend. So, whether that's a link, whether it's not a link, but I'd like to pick up maybe that case, get some factual information, of course, that I can share and discuss that case, because I think as we have discussions about cases, it just really brings more people into the know. The saddest part about doing cold cases is that you watch people die. You watch witnesses die. You watch relatives die. Everyone involved in the case dies. I teach at a college, and one of my last several classes, I've mentioned Taj's case, and no one knows about him. And, that is, to me, that's sad, but that is, I guess, life. That's our lives now, is that, why would a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid know about a case that was from 1981 unless it was a relative? And then even to some extent, relatives don't know much about, a disappearance in their own family, which is sad. But that's the reality of it. So I'm going to jump into something different, something new. Of course, I'll always jump back to Taj case. I hope in 2025 I can come on here with great news. I wish that was in 2024 and 2023, but hopefully I can share some positive news going forward. But anything that I can share, anything that I think of, or a question that someone has for me, I will put it up on here. I promise you that. So I think it's important. So thank you. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the shares and the subscriptions, and I will see you soon. Take care.